people who are attendees. I don't see his name, but it may be the phone number. So I'm going to promote that person and see if that's them. Okay.
Sure, go for it. Thank you.
Tim, are you on the line? Well, I have received no response, so I don't know who that might be, so I'm going to unpromote them.
Okay. Well, if he comes in, just let me know. We have some time there. So I am going to open up the meeting again. So we're going to go committee business then. There's nothing else. And item A, approval of minutes for April 5th, 2021. So,
Mr. Chair, I move approval of minutes April 5th, 2021 as presented.
Thank you. The motion by Committee Member Tran. Do I have a second? I'll second it. Martin, are you on? You okay? Just want to make sure you're on.
Yeah. Just I will be proud to second that.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
All right. So, thank you. All right. Motion by Committee Member Tran, seconded by Moore. All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you. We have approval of minutes for April 5th. Thank you. Item B, we have 2022 Asphalt Overlay Program preliminary project list and authorization to bid. And John Cole. Mr. Cole, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Brusso, committee members, and attending council members. I'm here today to present, let's see, I need participation screen sharing authorization. I can't present my screen. Is
Rebecca?
Working on it. He should be able to. He's a panelist.
Mm-hmm. And I used
Hold on a sec.
the link you sent me, Rebecca, so I practiced everything but that.
You should have
Rebecca, it says
ability to
it's
share your screen.
no, it says it's disabled by the host.
Disabled participation screen sharing.
There does not appear to be a way for me to turn that on from here. Give me one moment.
The beauty
Try
of
it now. My
There we
apologies.
go. I got it.
Perfect.
Okay, share that screen. Okay, can everyone see my presentation?
See,
okay,
thank you.
I'm here to present the 2022 asphalt overlay program preliminary project list and authorization to bid to you all. We have 6 schedules planned for next year. South 373rd, 16th Avenue South, South 336th Street, the Green Gables neighborhood, 20th Avenue South, and Southwest 308th Street. This map is incredibly hard to read because they are so dispersed next year. After the portion of questions, I do have blown up maps. If any of you are interested, I can present to you. So the policy question I have for you today is, should the council approve the 2022 Asphalt Overlay Program preliminary list and authorization for staff to proceed with design and bid of the proposed 2022 Asphalt Overlay Program? Available funding this next year is the RET and the MVET Fund 102 for $1,456,000. Solid waste utility tax for $2 million. The 2021 carryover estimated right now at about $91,000, and then the swim transfer of $50,000 gives us a total available budget of $3,597,000. $100,000, yeah. Schedule A We have South 373rd at an estimated $540,000. Schedule B, 16th Avenue South from South 356 to the second roundabout at $300,000. Schedule C, South 336th Street from 18th Avenue South to Weyerhaeuser Way underneath I-5 there at $786,000. Schedule D, Southwest 329th Street, which is the Green Gables neighborhood, at $902,000. Schedule E, 20th Avenue South from South 288th Street to South 280th Place at $550,000. And then the last schedule F is Southwest 308th Street for $427,000. Puts the estimated subtotal of construction cost at $3,505,000. If we take that estimated cost, include a contingency of 5%, which is $175,000, in-house design and administration fees of $352,000, estimated total program cost of a little over $4 million. Continued for the program cost, like I said, a little over $4 million. It's a preliminary figure used for estimating purposes only. The 2022 asphalt project will be awarded within available overlay program budget. Estimated advertising date is January 2022 and start of construction around April of 2022. Options considered for you today are approve the list of streets for the 2022 asphalt overlay project as presented and authorize staff to bid the 2022 asphalt overlay project, returning for authorization to award the project within the available 2022 asphalt overlay budget to the lowest responsible bidder. Option 2, direct staff to modify the preliminary list and return to committee for further action. Mayor's recommendation is Mayor recommends forwarding option 1 to the May 18th, 2021 council consent agenda for approval. And I'm available for any questions if y'all have any.
Thank you, John. So let me see here. We got questions. Committee member Tran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, John, for your presentation. I do have a questions. I know that this is just an estimate. The entire projects will cost roughly about $4 million, but the available funding is only 3.5, and I know this is just an estimate. But let's say if we are actually need $4 million, is there an option to come up with $435,000 to pay for all this?
That I'm not sure of if there's available additional funds. I do know that we kind of I take it personal this year. My estimate was actually quite high, and the bids came in quite low. And so in the past, what we've done was made one of the schedules a option. If bids came in low enough, then we could do it. And if not, then we wouldn't. We didn't do that this year, and they still came in quite low. So EJ might have a comment on additional funds above the estimated budget.
So right now, the answer is no. There's no additional funds programmed to this project. There's the possibility, specifically around the solid waste excise tax, that there might be additional funding because we started it at the half year. So there might be a little bit of carry forward from 2021 to be able to be used if it met the requirements for residential streets. That being said, like John said, we typically shoot a little high with the overlay and make sure that we basically get as much done as we can. And then if we need to back out a schedule to be inside the budget, we just don't award one schedule to the contractor for it to fit within the available budget.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I have committee member Moore. You have a question?
Yeah, quick question. For EJ, or I don't see the name. I'm so sorry.
John.
Or John, thank you. How does this compare to previous years of asphalt budgets?
This would be one of, if not the most robust budget, basically because of that solid waste tax. We dipped into it a little bit this year and started our residential overlay program this year, which Marine Hills we're currently working on and moving forward. So quite a bit of this schedule as I scroll through these roads here of the schedules. These would be not residential, but then from here on out, this is your the park. The school. Schedule D. Another somewhat residential here. PSE did quite a bit of this neighborhood with some of their area, so we would just be extending that. That would be residential. Lake Grove area would be another residential. So really about 2/3 of half to 2/3 of next year's schedule will be all residential, and that's thanks in large part to the solid waste tax.
Thank you.
Council President Honda.
Thank you. On the 373rd Street, will that be done about the same time the roundabout is being built? Was that funded by the state? The roundabout?
Yeah, it would be separate. I believe EJ, the roundabout at Pack Highway South and 373rd. I'm not sure when that's scheduled.
Yeah, so there are two separate projects.
Yeah.
Right.
They will not line up. Most likely, as of right now, the roundabout would be future down the road, unless we got additional grant funding.
Oh, okay.
So
All right.
this would be done first.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, John. So if I don't have any questions, I'd get to take a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'll move. Let's see. The committee recommends forwarding option 1 to the May 18th, 2021 City Council consent agenda for approval.
Okay.
I'll
We have a
second that.
Motion by Committee Member Moore, seconded by Committee Member Tran. Any other discussion on the motion? Hearing seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Passes 3-0. Thank you. Before we go to the next item, which is C, I want to go back to public comment. Rebecca, we have the public comment open again.
Okay, I have allowed the caller to speak.
They have to
Hello?
unmute. They have to unmute to be able to speak. They're still muted.
I have asked them to unmute. I don't know. I can't do it for them.
No, it's either *6 or #6 if they can hear us.
Still muted. Use another little bit here, I guess. Can't hear anything. You know who it
I
is?
just
Rebecca?
emailed him. I don't know what to do. He says he's ready to speak, but I haven't been able to hear him.
Okay. I'll just hold tight again and see if we can kind of work on that. I'm just going to move on to item C, which is our Greenway Pavement Markings Phase 2 2021 project bid award, and that's Jeff Hun. Jeff?
Thank you. Are you able to see the screen?
Not yet.
Ah. Sorry, I'll have some difficulties here.
See, Hong, it's raining over here. That's probably the problem. You got sun. There we go. See? Nope.
Sorry. Hold on.
You see your screen now, Jeff?
Okay.
There it comes. Correct.
So will you be able to see it now?
Yes,
Okay.
I see it.
Do it again. Okay.
There you go.
Good evening, Chair Peruso, committee members, council members. My name is Jeff Hahn. I'm the capital engineer for the City of Federal Way, and I'm presenting the Greenway Pavement Markings Phase 2 Project Bid Award to committee. The question before committee is whether to forward to council the award of the Greenway Pavement Markings Phase 2 Project to the lowest responsible bidder. The cost to the city for the Greenway Pavement Markings Phase 2 project was included within the approved budgets. Capital Project 306 Fund, project number 220. 5 bids were received and opened on April 15, 2021 for the Greenway Pavement Markings Phase 2 project. The lowest responsible bidder is Northwest Traffic with a total bid of $240,040. Here is the vicinity map for all 3 Schedule A, B, and C. The total estimated project cost is $284,000, which include construction costs, 5% construction contingency, design, construction management. The available budgets for the Greenway Pavement Marking Phase 2 project is $284,000 and is comprised of the following. We have MVET carry forward to 2021 and transfer fund 306 unallocated. Construction is anticipated to start in June 2021 with an estimated subtotal completion date is in September 2021. The options presented to committees are: 1, award all schedules for the Greenway Pavement Markings Phase 2 project to Northwest Traffic, the lowest responsible bidder, in the amount of $240,040, and approve a 5% construction contingency of $12,000 for a total of $252,042, and authorize the mayor to execute the contract. Or 2, reject all bids for the Greenway Pavement Markings Phase 2 project and direct staff to rebid the project and return to committee for further action. The mayor recommends forwarding option 1 to April 18, 2021 City Council consent agenda for approval. And staff is available for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Jeff. Can you go back to the? I was going to ask you to go back to the map you had sitting there because you kind of went over it really quick. Thank you. Just wanted to take a look at it again.
On the bottom, maybe, Jeff? Bottom left?
Okay.
Right, that one there. Okay. So, folks, could you explain some of this on this vicinity map, Jeff?
Basically, we have 3 schedules for for this year. And all these schedules are for basically for pavement markings, refreshing pavement markings like bike share lanes, crosswalk symbols, lane lines, and so on. I think Jason will be I think he will be explaining this better. Jason, can you hear me, Jason?
Yes, I can hear.
Okay.
What was the question again?
The question was to explain about this map for the auto stripings.
Yes, so we originally had this project as one large project, and based on just the funding of it being available, we broke it into different phases. And so this is, these were originally 3 phases, I guess, A, B, and C. And then we decided, once we realized there was enough funding available, they would just be 3 unique schedules with the ability to have flexibility. If the budget was not all there, you could only do 1 or 2 or a combination thereof.
Okay. Thanks, Jason. Thank you, Jeff. I just kind of wanted to take a look at it because, like I said, it went over pretty quick, and so I just want a quick explanation. Thank you. Any questions from the community members at all? You've seen none. Council President Honda, you have a question.
Thank you. So pavement markings are the lines on the roads, or is that where you put the bicycle symbol? Exactly what are we talking about?
We have multiple lines. We have share lanes. We have crosswalk. We have lane line, not lane line, but edge lines. So, but these are the majority of these are share lanes symbols. Where we have the bicycle lanes in the middle of the roadway that's sharing with the other vehicles.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? See any? So if there are any questions, I will take a motion.
Chair Baruso, I move to forward option 1 to May 18, 2021 consent agenda for approval.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. A motion by Committee Member Tran, seconded by Committee Member Moore. Any other discussion on the motion? If none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Passes 3-0. Thank you. Thank you, Jeff.
All right, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jason. Jason, you have the next one anyway. So, and our item D, NTS program project, Southwest 340th Street, 19th Avenue, Southwest Holly Park. So the floor is yours.
Okay, let me share screen. Let me see the PowerPoint.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. Well, good evening, Chair Baruso and Council President Honda and committee. I'm here tonight to present the Silver Lake Neighborhood Traffic Safety 2019 project at Southwest 340th between 19th Avenue Southwest and Sahali Park. So the question before you is, should the council authorize the construction of 2 speed humps on Southwest 340th between 19th Avenue Southwest and Sahali in 2021 and 1 traffic circle with chicanes at the intersection of the same intersection in 2022? And here's the map of the area, the project area. So many are probably familiar with this particular area by the school. So these 2 streets are on the on the intersection at where the school Sahali Middle School is. This particular location is between the 19th Avenue and essentially the school driveway or the park entrance, if you will, as noted by the yellow dash line. So a little bit of background, because this is actually a somewhat a long project in terms of when it started, at least relative to NTS timeframes. So originally, the city received a petition back in May of 2019, expressing some concerns of excessive speeding, cut-through traffic, as well as a need to improve the crossing safety at Southwest 340th Street and 19th Avenue Southwest. So Southwest 340th is a minor collector, and that's the street that we evaluated back in 2019. And it, based on the traffic study and the NTS criteria, it met the minimum of 3.0 severity criteria with a 4.5 score. So we collected the data in June and July. It was kind of both, at the end of June, early July, both during and after the school year had finished. So both while school was in session and after. And we took counts, as you can see here, indicated in with the red line. And the average daily traffic that we gathered or collected there was almost 2,000 vehicles a day. And most important to note is the 85th percentile speed was 38.3 miles per hour, and in a 25-mile speed speed limit. So fairly significant, speed. 85th percentile speed, 29.4 miles per hour average. So here's the criteria table and how it was scored in blue. So as I noted, the 85th percentile was over the 36 miles, which equates to 3 points. The ADT was it was 1987, so that was 1 point, and then it's obviously right next to a school, so that gets you a half point right there. So that's 4.5 points. And it is to note there weren't any collisions in the 5 years on this segment. So fast forward, and I will point this out if you'll note, obviously the somewhat length of time between when we received the petition and took the speed study and when we had our public meeting. And obviously, as many of you know, we had a lot of issues with COVID this past year and having public meetings. So that's one of the reasons that there was this length of time, but also when Eric left and I took over, there was a gap, obviously that, and there was staffing, obviously the staffing issue, shortage. So as all that kind of came together in terms of a perfect storm, we finally got to the point where we realized we could hold a public meeting in a virtual setting like this, with the feedback that we would need to obtain in an NTS project, which is usually quite an intimate setting, and so it took us a while to understand that we could still do that and still be effective. So we did get the Zoom virtual meeting set up. We did that on February 3rd of this year. We had a pretty good turnout. 9 residents attended, but we also had representatives from both the traffic division as well as Federal Way Public Schools and South King County Fire and EMS. Those in the group attending, the residents, the main concerns that they voiced, which again are similar to what was in the petition, but some additional concerns also were brought up. But again, the speeding on 340th, cut through traffic between, basically 21st and / campus, depending on which direction you're coming from, and 12th, which is on the east side. And then also kind of more of a new point that has probably come up more recently, and that's the hypothesis is based on COVID, drag racing and burnouts that are resulting from vehicles coming from the Twin Lakes Park and Ride. So that was something that wasn't quite, communicated in the petition 2 years ago, and I think that's more of a recent issue. And then some other, I also mentioned the concern of crossing at 19th Avenue and 340th of scholars going to school. So based on the feedback and the discussion that we had with the residents and of course the stakeholders such as fire and rescue and the school district and then of course the division staff, the residents were mostly focusing on speed humps and the roundabout traffic circle as the main ideas or traffic calming measures that were discussed, and those were the most popular and most favorable from the resident standpoint. So after discussion, both in the meeting and internally back within the office, we came up with some options that we are including in the proposal. So the first option is to install 2 speed humps and 1 traffic circle in 2021. Option 2 is to take no action. And option 3 is to install 2 speed humps in 2021 and the traffic circle and the chicanes. And I've left those out of the parentheses, I apologize. The chicanes go along with the traffic circle in 2022. And so the map can show you where those locations of the devices would be. The speed humps are going to be placed, somewhat evenly spaced, approximately from the existing speed hump that is in the lower right-hand corner. You can kind of see it. I'll see if you can. I don't know if you can see my mouse or not, but I'm kind of motioning around it. There's an existing speed hump there, and then the 2 speed humps that we would install are evenly spaced between that and the intersection. And then the traffic circle would be installed at 19th and 340th with 2 chicanes to help with the deflection that's required to make the traffic circle effective in reducing speeds. I'll pause here just for a split second in case anyone has any quick questions about the diagram. If not, then I of course can answer as well when I'm done, but I wanted to hold it because it's a lot to take in visually.
Jason, how far are those chicanes apart from each other?
That's so they're on the opposite side, kind of essentially on the opposite side of the intersection, and that's for the entry deflection and the exit deflection coming, to essentially, since this isn't a traditional roundabout from original design, these chicanes are necessary to help, redirect traffic and slow them down. If we don't have both of them, say we only have the first one, the northern one, people leaving the traffic circle can, then also accelerate a lot faster and leave at a higher rate of speed. So they're both meant, to be importantly to help the deflection. So in terms of distance, I don't have off the top of my head, but I don't know, maybe Rick could help me out, bail me out on this one. If he has Google Earth to help me out with this one. I don't have it off the top of my head. I apologize.
No, that's okay. I'm just wondering if there's a set number, feet, according to rules or something like that. That's all.
It's going to be basically just based on the specific site location. So in this case, the 340th, the width of that is 60 feet.
I guess Thomas left already.
And so we're talking probably close to that, based on visually what you can see in the picture. We haven't, we've put the spray paint out to give a basic location out on the street where they would go to help with showing the residents who were participating, that we were starting to do this process. Obviously, final design needs to be, it'll get down to the more specifics of the exact dimensions and location, but that's the rough location of where they'll be located.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions on the map? Council President Honda, did you want to ask a question for this? You want to wait?
Actually, I can ask now.
Okay.
Because this was originally asked for in 2019. And we didn't do it in 2020, for all the reasons you said. It seems like it's most logical to do all of it at one time because it's exceeded by the time 2022 comes around, it'll be more than 2 years.
Yeah, I can actually, if you don't mind, President Honda, I will explain a little bit of that and help answer your question on the next couple slides. Yeah.
Thank you.
And I want to get into a little bit more, obviously, the results, so to kind of finish up some of the data that we collect, that we got from the ballot. So, but I will, yes, answer your question in just one second. So we did the balloting, of course, after the public meeting, and once we decided what we were going to propose for the options. Now, at the time of the public meeting, we didn't get into the issue of really a whole lot about the issue about the NTS budget and so forth and so on. So the options presented to the residents were just the options of terms of what calming measures we were going to use, which they had agreed on or had supported. So the ballots were mailed out to 37 locations, residents within 600 feet of the traffic calming devices. 19 of them returned on time, which is a 51% return rate, which is pretty good. Of those that were returned, 89% of them supported the option 1, which was 2 speed humps and 1 traffic circle with chicane. So the idea of putting those in, as opposed to no action. Now the staff proposal is option 3, which aligns with the selection of the residents favoring option 1, but it also aligns with the residents' priorities and the NTS budget policy limits. And that's kind of gets into the explanation of how we've proposed the construction schedule in terms of the budget. So the project estimate for all of it is about $30,500, which exceeds the $15,000 per year per neighborhood budget, which is an NTS policy. So, as you probably all know, there's $50,000 annual NTS budget. Currently, we have one project under construction in 2021, which leaves $34,600 still available in 21. Now, if the entire project is constructed this year, we'll be $4,100, approximately $4,100 over budget. So that's why we've proposed this phased approach. So putting part of it in 21 and then the rest in 22. So that is kind of why I wanted to wait to show you this slide to kind of address that that part of it. So before I go forward with the options, does that answer your question, Council President Honda?
Well, it does. However, it seems that, since it started in 2019, that it would just be the best solution, in my opinion, to do the whole thing at one time, because we couldn't go forward in 2020 because of all the things that you mentioned. So I know that the traffic over in that location can be pretty bad, and I want to keep the kids safe. And a lot of kids at Sahalee do walk to school. So Just my opinion.
Yeah, and if I can jump in here real fast, Council President, if you don't mind. The conundrum we're up against is to do that and do the whole project this year. We would have to wait until the budget amendment process is done and request an increase. And then once that's done, then we could go back and award this. So realistically, that would, with the paving window of the year, getting that done at all this year, going through the budget amendment process is probably slim. So, we're kind of, your point is very well taken, but we're kind of at the point where it's, do we do something and then finish it in 2022 to remain within our budgets, or do we try and get it through the budget amendment process, full well realizing that we probably won't be able to build anything until 2022 if we miss the paving window. So I don't have an easy solution to that question, but that's the question that we are asking. And I think from my perspective, getting something done this year is better than nothing. But that, frankly, is the conversation with council.
Okay, thank you.
Can you remember more? You had a question? You had your hand.
Well, I mean, so EJ or Jason, so this started in 2019, and I assume citizens brought this up. Is that right?
Yes.
Got it. Right. And so, I think what you're saying is really the only option that's at hand, which is to do partly now and part later. If I understand, but if I understand, that's what you're saying, EJ.
That's it, exactly.
I mean, but at the same time, I would concur with Council President Honda, just because the fact that, these are citizens that have brought this forth. I'm sure they're anxiously awaiting to see this completed. I know, and you know this yourself, EJ, that people have been asking me about speed bumps, lately. So I know how important that this topic is, and but obviously, and the mayor recommends which option again? Did I see in here? Option 3, all up front.
No, he recommended option 3, which is doing as much as we can this year and then finishing the balance next year.
That's exactly what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah. Same thing.
Just want to make sure I did it. Perfect. Okay. So, I would just put that on the table, but I definitely understand what you're saying, and it sounds like option 3 is really the only option we have at this time. So, thank you.
Yeah, and I when I mentioned it earlier about not only does this coincide or align with the NTS policy that requires us to not go over X amount per neighborhood per year, but it also aligns with the two. There was definitely support of both the speed humps and the traffic circle. And when we decided, well, if we're gonna do one or the other first, the residents definitely were in favor of the speed humps, in their discussion primarily, slightly ahead of the traffic circle. If I had to weigh their comments, so this also aligns with their preference. I would gather, and Rick could say if he had different feelings on that, but I would say that they would be very supportive of the speed humps going in first, and then the traffic circle with chicanes.
Thank you. Councilmember Sefatasan, you have a question?
Yes, I do. My question is about the roundabout. How much would it cost to add beautification, vegetation, and stuff in the circle? Because we had one installed in my neighborhood, and there's no room for that, and I would like to see that as part of the project. Is that possible to do, or is there a reason why we can't do it?
EJ, is it okay if I defer that one to you since that's
Yeah, so that's a fairly complicated question, council member. The short version is the small ones that are in neighborhoods. Typically, the answer is no. We cannot put plants in the middle because we have to be able to get fire trucks through, and so fire trucks typically get through them by driving over them. They're designed in such a way that they're considered mountable for emergency vehicles. So that precludes a lot of them from being done without taking people's yards and making them basically full-size roundabouts, which obviously is not the point of this program. So the other thing we run into is, practically speaking, there's a substantial difference in maintenance requirements between concrete and being able to go out with a pack blower and clean it off a couple times a year, and vegetation and having to maintain it. We do not have the resources to maintain the ones we have today, let alone future ones. So, I mean, as a city, we're going the opposite direction of removing vegetation from some of them to allow for a reduced amount of maintenance to coincide with staffing levels. So we certainly, on a operation side, are not looking to add additional vegetation in the roundabouts.
Okay, valid. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? And I don't see any. So, hearing, seeing none, I'll take a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to forward the proposed option 3 to the May 18, 2021 consent agenda for approval.
I'll second that.
All right. Motion by Committee Member Tran, seconded by Committee Member Moore. Any other discussion on the motion? Hearing, seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Passes 3-0. Thank you. Thank you, Jason.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
We're on to item E, authorization to lease the surface water management partial 292-104-9059 to James W. Fowler Company. This is Desiree. The floor is yours, Desiree.
Oh, actually,
yes, excuse me.
It's
Before we do that,
me.
I'm sorry. Yes, sorry, Desiree. We do have that one comment, so I was going to allow Rebecca to read the comment. I guess now it's going to happen. So, thank you. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Mr. Tim Atterbury was unable to connect with his phone, so he sent me his comments to read on his behalf. And this is what he had to say. The topic is CWAs. I watched last month's debate on CWAs. Some things need to be clarified and reviewed. The building trades unions don't match worker residency to the projects in their town when doing dispatching. So it is possible that no resident of Federal Way would ever work on a Federal Way project under a CWA. Mr. Moore is ignoring the email received whereby the Washington chapter of the National Association of Minority Contractors is opposed to CWAs. Given the astronomical cost.
Point of clarification, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Names are not supposed to be mentioned, are they not?
No, they're really not supposed to be. Thank you.
Thank you.
My apologies, I'm just reading what he wrote.
Yep.
Well, that's okay, Rebecca.
Sorry about that. Given the astronomical cost to implement a CWA and the potential tax increase on residents of Federal Way and the fact that no Federal Way worker is guaranteed to work on a project, this seems like you're trying to fit a round peg in a square hole, not to mention the city's small construction budget. That's the end of the comment.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Mr.
I need
Atterbury.
to know on a technical matter if Rick Perez is able to speak. Rick?
Are you there, Rick?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So we're on to item E, and excuse me, yes, E, and that was Teresa Deville. Teresa, I believe that one is yours.
It is. Thank you. Let me get up my screen. Okay. Can everybody see the slide?
Yes.
Okay. So good evening, Chair Baruso, committee members, council members, and interested members of our community. I'm Teresa Thurlow with the Public Works Department in the Surface Water Management Division, and I'm here to present the temporary lease of swim property to James W. Fowler Company. And the policy question before you tonight: should City Council authorize the lease of swim parcel number 2921049059 to James W. Fowler Company? And at this point, I'm just going to call it subject property. A little bit of background information. Surface Water Management Division has a small parcel over off of the south side of 359th, and Lake Haven Water District contacted me and asked if their contractor could use that area as a laydown for their construction project that will happen over the next year. We have leased parcels in the past for similar purposes if those parcels are not going to be utilized by our maintenance division during the time that the lease is proposed. Our lease is proposed to be through May 22 with an option to extend if they need it. The proposed lease amount is $1,000 per month. I called around to area general contractors and I talked to other departments within the city to get the going rate for lease amounts for parcels that have no buildings or are not in the central downtown core area. So 359th, here's Pack Highway. 356 right here. There's a pond over here. And if you head south on Pack Highway and take a left heading east, there's a lot of wetlands, and then you'll see our swim parcel. And this is the area that is being requested. We do have a buffer that we put into the proposed area that could be utilized, so they would not be able to push past that buffer because we have wetlands in the stream in the area. And their project is actually just across the street over here. So it's very close to where they're at. And also, they will be doing a few improvements to this project for their convenience, and they've offered to leave that in place if we feel that it would help us. The options before you tonight are to authorize the lease of swim parcel number 2921049059 to James W. Fowler Company, or do not authorize the lease. And the mayor recommends forwarding option 1 to the May 18, 2021 City Council consent agenda for approval. Sorry, I realized I just had bullets instead of option numbers, but that was the first option. And I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Teresa. I have a couple questions. Number one is, what improvements are they talking about? And then number two, what happens to if they're going to have it for a year? Do we have any problems with that during the winter time? Things like that.
Sure. So for their use, they are going to put down some large stone and some under fabric so that they don't have track out onto the road from their vehicles. And then they're going to have a storage area and a site trailer. Our work, we use this parcel predominantly for storage of spoils during the summer. And this year, our ditching is mostly in the north, west and east of the city. So we wouldn't use this area. It would be the wrong direction for us to go. So this parcel will not be used by us for this period of time. This parcel is within our conservation zone. We did not use conservation funds to purchase it, but we do consider this wetland area and the neighboring area to be part of our wetlands. It just so happens there is a usable space within the parcel itself that came with the wetlands. And then this winter, there's no problem with the use. We wouldn't use it all during winter.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions for any community members at all? Hearing seeing none. Councilmember Kochmar, you have a question.
I think Greg Baruso, Chair, was asking what the Lake Haven project would be, and I think you answered what the contractor was going to use the space for. But what is the project that Lake Haven is building? Are they putting in a water main or sewer?
Actually, they're doing a pump station and associated water line with that.
Is that because of the wetlands in the area and the pump stations for sewer?
No, the pump stations for the water. There are water wells in this area. There are established water wells in this area. And any more detail on the project, and I would have to consult with Lake Haven to get that detail.
Sure. No, I was just curious. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? I don't see any, hear any. Do I have a motion?
Let's see, Mr. Chair. I move to forward the proposed authorization to lease swim parcel number as stated in the document to James W. Fowler Co. to the May 18, 2021 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
Community Member Moore, could you please state the parcel number for record?
I sure can. Number sign 292-104-9059. I'd be happy to read the recommendation again.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. I move to forward the proposed authorization to lease swim parcel number 292-104-9059 to James W. Fowler Company to the May 18th, 2021 consent agenda for approval.
Thank you.
I'll second that
motion, and I think, thank you. Community Member Moore's motion and seconded by Community Member Tran. Any other discussion on the motion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes 3-0. Thank you, Theresa.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to item F, award concrete sidewalk beveling trip hazard removal contract, and that is Desiree. Desiree, the floor is yours.
Good evening, Chair Baruso, committee members, Council President Honda, and members of the council. Just making sure you can all see my screen, right?
Let's see it.
Great. Gonna start the slideshow. There we go. All right. The policy question before you today is, should City Council award the concrete beveling, sidewalk beveling, trip hazard removal contract to the lowest responsible bidder? So some background information is part of our sidewalk maintenance program includes trip hazard removal. In our ADA transition plan, after reviewing the downtown core as well as all of our arterial network, we have over $200,000 of work that is needed currently. We don't have enough staff resources to complete this work timely, though this is work that we do in-house. We did look into doing a limited public works contract in January 2021. So if you think it's Groundhog Day and you're seeing the same thing again, you're not mistaken. The limited public works contract just was too small. It didn't provide us enough flexibility. So we decided to kind of take a step back and go back out to a formal bid to be able to award a bigger contract that would give us some more resources and flexibility. So again, what this work entails is that when you have a sidewalk panel that's basically still intact and the offset at the joints is about 2 inches or less, you have an option to actually grind it, and we call it beveling. Basically, you grind it from 0 to the depth of the rise to be able to remove the trip hazard. And so that is a really good option and cost-effective option on how to do this. So that's basically a picture that you're seeing of what that looks like before and after. So procurement, we went through a request for bids through the small works contract process. Precision Concrete Cutting Incorporated was the lowest responsible bidder, and in fact they were our only bidder, but the price that they provided was very reasonable and was similar, very close to the same price that they have given other jurisdictions under the limited public works contract process. So we propose to award them a contract on not to exceed $100,000 initially. That would be $50,000 per year for the year 2021 and 2022. And the budget is already programmed, and it's within the Streets 101 Maintenance Fund. So the options considered is to award concrete beveling trip hazard removal contract to Precision Concrete Cutting Incorporated, the lowest responsible bidder, in the amount of $100,000, and authorize the mayor to execute the contract. Or option 2 is to reject all bids and provide direction to staff. The mayor recommends option 1 being forwarded to the May 18th, 2021 consent agenda. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Desiree. Any questions from the committee members at all? Hearing seeing none, Council President Honda.
Thank you. Desiree, if a tree is causing the sidewalk to have an issue, a trip hazard, wouldn't it be a good idea to remove the tree or to do something with the roots of the tree so that it doesn't continue to cause an issue?
Eventually, yes, because you're right. Most of the time it will continue to cause an issue over time. So if the offset becomes greater than 2 inches, then we usually have to remove the panel. We take a look at the root system at that time. We remove the roots that are in the way, that are causing the problem. We can leave the tree in place as long as those roots are not considered the only main roots that are supporting the tree. And so we've been successful many times to be able to do remediation that way. It doesn't mean that over time that it'll become a problem again, but it does buy you some time. Some of the trees out there are very big, and it becomes very, very costly to start getting into the tree removal process. And I know we love our trees. They were put there for a reason, and that's another thing that we're trying to be cognizant of is the removal of those trees as well. So yes, but I think there are ways, depending on the situation, we can remediate it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, hearing and seeing none, I'll take a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to forward option 1 to the May 18, 2021 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
First, motion by Committee Member Tran, seconded by Committee Member Moore. Any other discussion on the motion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Passes 3-0. Thank you, Desiree, but you're not done yet. You have the next one. Item G, authorization to accept grant funding for transportation improvement project.
All righty. There we go. All right, here we go again. So the policy question before you is, should City Council authorize acceptance of transportation and grant funding? So this particular project that we received grant funding for is called the Southwest King County Regional Trail Plan, and Council authorized the application for this project last year, back in January or February, I believe, of 2020. What this project does is a planning project, and what it will do is that we will identify and confirm the specific routes to connect our regional trail, which would be the BPA trail, existing BPA trail, which is shown in green in Federal Way there, with all the other regional trails that are surrounding us, to the north, to the east, and to the south. So a collaborative effort to really identify what those connections are. This map is from the Puget Sound Regional Council that did a gap analysis and made some attempts to identify these routes. However, these routes have never been confirmed and made it into our comprehensive plan. And until they make it into comprehensive plans, we can't move forward in the next steps of trying to get funding to implement those regional trail systems. So that's what this project is about. So we got the money. It's federal money, STP funds through the Puget Sound Regional Council regional program. The estimated total project cost is $300,000. The grant funds we've been awarded is $250,000 with a city match that is identified in in the budget of $50,000 from the transportation capital funds, which are made up of motor vehicle excise tax, real estate excise tax, and transportation impact fees. So the options considered is to approve to accept transportation grant funding and authorize the mayor to execute related agreements, or do not approve to accept the transportation grant funding and provide direction to staff. The mayor recommends option 1, approve to accept a transportation grant funding, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Desiree. Any questions? Okay, done. So I'll take a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to forward the proposed resolution to the May 18th, 2021 consent agenda for approval.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Motion by Committee Member Moore, seconded by Committee Member Tran. Any other discussion on the motion? Hearing seen none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Passes 3-0. Thank you. Thank you, Desiree. We're going to move on to item H. Mr. Bill Vedino, you have the climate action planning.
Chair Baruso,
yours.
Council President Honda, members of the committee. Glad to bring forward to you a report that we'd love to share with you first. And of course, you've got it in your packet, but we've got a PowerPoint presentation. And then, of course, the desire is to get your feedback and then present this to the entire council, and then start to move forward on what I would call a process, a strategy, a beginning to have us take a look at these issues. So anyway, I'm joined by the two citizens who, and we can go to the next slide, the two citizens who brought this to our attention. And it's just proof that the good works of our city continue through COVID. Cindy and Mark Panett came to the council, I believe it was October. And Cindy, of course, we know her as a retired warehouser, controller, financial manager. She's the treasurer of Fusion and the Federal Way Performing Arts Foundation. And they're both chairing committees and working with the League of Women Voters. She also sings with the Federal Way Chorale. Mark is retired from Airborne Express as a systems analyst, and also does a lot of projects in the community. Well, they came forward to the council meeting, I think you all remember, and just said they are members of Seattle-King County League of Women Voters Climate Action Committee. And some great things were coming out of the cities that were joining together, and that we should consider that as well. So after that meeting, myself, and then joined by Steve McNay, began to meet with them to figure out a way to come up with a strategy, a process that would lead to a plan. And frankly, when you hear about this, what I call the original Total Quality Management Plan, Do, Check, Act, Plan, Do, Check, Act. And this process would not only involve what we do as a city within what we do, but also hopefully other government entities, the private sector, schools, and just the community. A simple act as easy as going up to the drive-through bank and turning off the engine while you're waiting. I mean, it's just many things. Keeping your grocery trips down to help save, the climate. So anyway, I'm going to turn this over to both Cindy and Mark, and they are, citizen representatives, the best of Federal Way, what Federal Way is all about in our 30 years of people who are volunteering with this group and now been working months trying to come up with a process for us. So welcome, Cindy and Mark.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you to having us tonight. We would like to probably move on to the next slide here and just say that Federal Way's comprehensive plan gives many indications that the city affirms goals to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in line with both the county and the state goals. And the League of Women Voters also has experience and believes that the city must increase its community engagement to successfully implement achieving climate action goals.
These are the goals that King County has, and you'll notice it was to be a 25% reduction by last year, and we failed to meet that. Emissions stayed flat. The goal for 2030 is a 50% reduction, and 2050 an 80% reduction. So these are rather aggressive goals that both the county and the state have. Next.
Okay, so it's important that the city engages the public in this effort. Through education and public outreach, people will start to change their behaviors, and then carbon emissions can be reduced and targets can be met. So for an example of public engagement, we could have surveys that could say, ask questions like, what would it take for you to take public transportation? What is holding you back from that? And then we would have to think about ways to improve situations so people could take public transportation.
This map shows the cities that are, which ones are these? That the League of Women Voters is working with. Goes from Enumclaw all the way up to Bothell and Woodinville. And all these cities are committed to the county goals, and each one has a league representative that's working with the city council or citizens.
Okay, so we think that by using the county's climate action toolkit, which they've worked up, that we could use to take 5 steps that would achieve for us a climate action plan for Federal Way.
And the first thing that the county recommends is that we need to understand our emissions. That involves what's called a greenhouse gas inventory. Many cities started with doing one by proxy. Can you go to the next? Which I put together an example of a proxy for Federal Way based on the fact that Federal Way represents about 4% of the population of King County. The circular graphic on the left is King County's total emissions in 2017, and our emissions I projected to be about 4% of that. And as you can see from that, the bulk of the greenhouse gas emissions come from transportation and buildings. So after a proxy, they recommend taking a more detailed, customized inventory. And the cities that have undertaken this usually used a consultant, or they might have done it themselves. Both methods would require staff resources. If you're going to do it yourself, that would involve a dedicated staff person for a period of several months to actually complete the work, or you could hire a consultant. The county is currently in contract negotiations with a consulting firm to work with the cities in the King County, like Federal Way, and there may be grants, or maybe the county might pick up the tab for the consultant, but the staff time would probably be at the city's expense.
Okay, so we're talking about the first step in this process, this 5-step planning process. And so the first thing is to take an inventory of what are our emissions, our greenhouse gas emissions. And part of this first step is also that we recommend that we join the K4C. And that is the little acronym for King County Cities Climate Collaborative. So it's 16 cities in King County, as well as the county and the port, and they're collaborating they're committed to climate action planning. They have benefits, which mainly is to exchange ideas with other cities, what's working, the ways to engage community, little events they're having, or ways that they're engaging the community. The cost to join this is about $2,500 a year, plus there would have to be staff that would go to quarterly meetings, and annually the county executive has a meeting with the elected leaders of each of the communities that are in this collaborative. And you can see this little graphic here of the cities that are in the K4C, and down south we have Kent, Normandy Park, Renton, Tukwila, and Burien. So it's open for anyone in King County and the 39 cities of King County to join that group. And it's highly recommended just to join with them. Next slide. Let's see. Did I do that right? Oh, wait a second. Go back one. Uh-oh, maybe I can't. Let's see. Here we are. Okay, so step, did I do that right? Go back one. There we are. Step 2. This is the idea that we need to set specific climate goals. So we would have a mayor-appointed climate action task force, and that could be a small group which would include 1 or 2 council members, some of the staff, the mayor's staff, the city staff, some concerned citizens like maybe Mark and me, some people with expertise in the area of this kind of planning, and to get together and set specific goals. You might think about what goals for agriculture, what kind of goals for industry in Federal Way, what are the biggest sources of emissions for Federal Way, and so how can we create jobs, economic development, while we're setting these goals so we can incorporate growth as well as emission reductions. What is within the city's direct control, and then also build in flexibility in these goals so that as we understand more of the barriers and opportunities, we can build in some flexibility in these goals. So the idea would be to be in alignment to reduce emissions by 50% in the decade and 80% by 2050, and make this recommendation to the mayor. So it might take a couple of months to get those goals set.
This is what is known as a wedge analysis. It's a visual representation. It shows the business as usual. If we do nothing about greenhouse gas emissions, the top line would be status quo, and the bottom line with the little diamonds on it for the 2 target dates we've been talking about would be if we're able to meet the goals. And each wedge represents an area where that we can address. The biggest one would be the electrical supply, but it includes things like building codes, reducing energy usage, conservation, cutting car travel and things like that. And so I know that this graph the first time I saw it was kind of confusing at first glance, but after I read about it a little more, it's actually a pretty good visual representation to help you make your decisions. Okay.
Okay, so after you set the goals, then we need to actually create a plan, a detailed climate action plan. And this, we would say, would be a good idea to involve many people in this to engage the community. So we have a plan that works, that will actually, we would get there and achieve reductions of emissions. So this would be using the goals set by the task force and prioritize the largest areas of impact and engage and educate the community. So ways to engage down here, there's a suggestions, surveys, focus groups, interviews, workshops, panels, events. Events can be fun. This effort would be able to be flexible and change as we learn more about what does and doesn't work. And we would engage all walks of the community, citizens, businesses, faith community, different cultures, civic groups, PTA, school, fire, water, sewer, everybody. Try to get everyone involved, but to create a plan. And then lastly, after this plan is created, get the approval from City Council and make that highly publicized so the community understands that we've agreed to do this plan.
Okay, I guess the most important take from this is that climate adaptation is going to have to become an integral part of all the planning and decision making that the city and the community engage in. It's going to affect everything from zoning, where we focus our development efforts, making the city more pedestrian friendly, things like that. And that's going to require a lot of effort, and we're just going to have to think about climate in every decision that we make.
And lastly, the fifth step is to measure and report progress. So there's some examples there. This is 6 cities that have got a climate action plan. So for your reference, you could go out and see the links there of what other cities are doing. And there's lots of examples about all the steps in this process. So Bill, you want to come back and close it out there?
Well, thank you. And basically the next step is to get your thoughts and then have this in a more erudite fashion, but for the sake of the whole community to watch it, see this process that's being recommended.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark, Cindy. Thank you, Bill. Is there any questions? Committee member Moore, you have a question.
All right. Cindy and Mark, you guys are visionary leaders, I'll tell you that. And I've always appreciated you guys and your contribution to our community, seriously. And the funny thing is before this was even on the agenda, Councilmember Bruce and I talked about such a thing and whatnot. So I definitely applaud you bringing this up to the council and to the mayor's office and potentially here. And Cindy, that I've advocated for, and you have to forgive me, I'm not feeling too well. So if I start coughing, I apologize. But you'll recall that, we've advocated for solar panels for the Performing Arts and Event Center, which I've yet to see on there. And I'm optimistic that's going to happen soon, especially now that we have federal lobbyists potentially. And of course, with all the city buildings too. So I think this is an important topic. And, as I Some of you guys will know that I have a son now, and so it becomes that much more important that I that I do whatever I can to leave the world a better place, and that's a responsibility, So the only thing I have, obviously, this is an important topic. I support it. I'm very much eager to dissect it, work with my colleagues, work with you, work with anybody on this. One of the things I was pleased to hear you say is that we need to get everybody involved in this. And so I do think that Puget Sound Energy should be have a seat at the table. I believe they have good objectives as well. I know they've supported measures at the state legislature. So that would be really the only thing I would add. But other than that, I think this is fantastic. I think this is needed. And I'm just eager to try work with everybody to come up with a good product for Federal Way. So thank you so much for bringing this up, and I'll hand it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Martin.
Thank you. Any other committee members? Okay, so I'll go to Council President Honda.
Thank you. Thanks, Cindy and Mark, for being here. I appreciate what you're doing and the time you're putting into this. Can you tell me what the $2,500 covers to join the executives committee? We generally aren't charged to join committees like this, so.
Yes, what we talked with the county representative, and I believe that a lot of it goes to funding grants and projects within the K4C group decides what they want to fund. So, and I'm drawing a blank on specifics, but they've been doing this for several years now. So it's mostly to kind of pool some money together. But was there other things?
It could be something as simple as providing some funding for like farmers markets or community outreach efforts in some of the cities.
And it's on a sliding scale. So for our population base, that's the fee for Federal Way. But for bigger, Seattle pays more, for instance.
Okay. So one of the things we hear often in Federal Way is that we don't get our share of funding down here in the South. So has there been a track record of programs or projects that this group has done that includes the South? Because I saw more cities that were involved in the North than I did in the South.
Yeah. Let me get back to you on that. I will get some information on what kind of what that funding is used for and the representation for the South.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Council President, if I can also add, one light that I see is they may be able to bring in the consulting power through the group funding to help us do our analysis. So that's what that's what they're looking at, and then of course we'd benefit from that. That would be, a very good thing for us as we try to analyze.
So the consultant would work with a group of cities all at once?
Correct.
Okay.
And that would help us gather the data, and it would coach us. And I mean, there's a way for us to use a toolkit where we're doing it, Steve and I, and then working with all of our colleagues. But then there'll be expertise too that we believe is going to come from that. So that's what I'm hoping for.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So, Councilmember Kraft, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Chair Baruso. So my question was really similar to Council President Honda's. Hopefully that the funding would be used to help us do our analysis on our city's emissions. Mm-hmm. I'm really excited about this project. The one question that I have for Bill, and first of all, thank you for the presentation. Thank you for your work on this. It's a really important work. The question I have for Bill is whether or not our city staff is already incorporating sort of these ideals when we do think about projects? How much of a education effort is it going to be for our city staff if we implement something like this for the city of Federal Way?
Well, the good news is our staff here reminds me of the little scene in a movie where a truck gets a story is told about a truck getting stuck in the Holland Tunnel, and the engineers can't figure it out. And then a younger adult says, deflate the tires. As we've looked at climate change, I believe at a report a couple months ago at this committee, Parks heroically was talking about all the things that they did, not because they were asked to a degree, but also they were very clever going, how can we save energy? Not only is it good for the environment, it saves us money. And so when I look in my office, I've got 2 tubes instead of 1 tube in my fluorescent light. And they put things on timers. And so cleverly, before solar power, this team has bought into not only saving money for energy, but also climate change. So I think, and then of course we're always looking at cost too, which will be good. But I think there's a culture already, and I think that'll help. And then of course we all could learn a lot more too. So I think we're sort of set up for that, which is nice.
Wonderful. So this would just basically formalize it and see more education, obviously, in more areas for where we can improve, getting more input. I think that this is a really good program. So thank you so much for bringing it.
And they'll be watching
forward.
every dime and they'll be trying to figure out how do we do this based on our budget too. I mean, they're the best of all worlds for a city, I think.
Great.
But taking credit for what's being done too.
Definitely.
Well.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for the presentation.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Chairman,
So I just wanna-
this is Tim Johnson. If I could,
Go ahead,
sir,
Tim.
to the council, you directed economic development in 2020 to look at how to create a tech strategy for the city. We're in the midst of that report. I'm holding in my hands right now an infographic on looking at clean industry for Federal Way and what it means. We'll have that report completed towards the end of June, 1st of July for the City Council to review. But that takes in a considerable amount of different elements and sectors as we move forward with it. And I think it's quite an extensive effort that the council has led us on, but we are working that direction. And may I also go back, Chair, and also remind the council that you had a presentation that was provided to you by Professor Robert Harmon looking at technologies, and you were given his report and his video presentation that he made. You can go back and all of you can take a look at that. I think you'll find it very insightful. So we are working the right direction on this, I think, much more diligently. But everybody forgets the foundry work that the Economic Development Unit does for the city, and as such, sometimes it doesn't get always elevated, but we are in the midst of that. Thank you.
Great,
Thank you,
great
Tim.
to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, and I see, you know, in doing this, I see a company seeing many different elements of the city trying to get this together and trying to get all this in. Even when you're talking about equity, and if we come to the point where, you know, we're, as a city, we see there's certain areas that their carbon footprint is a little larger because they can't afford LED bulbs and things like that. You know, it's something to look at too. So I appreciate it. Thank you. Any other questions for Bill, Cindy, and Mark? I think this is a great start, great program that we want to look at. And I've had the question too of the other cities, so I'm sure they have, Cindy, Mark, there's some type of template that they have when they went into this.
Yes, and it's all out on the web. And there's, if you click on these links, there's a toolkit, there's a strategic climate plan, action plan. So, and all kinds of examples and index appendices with all kinds of good stuff in that. So yes, we don't have to reinvent it.
Yes. Thank you.
I think since you've all seen this and read this, and the entire council is here, I think then we can dig deeper when we take this to council to give you the more exciting examples of how this analysis would be done and what we'd be looking at.
Right. And I agree. That's what I was kind of alluding to a little
We won't
bit,
redo
'cause
the
we're
same
all here.
presentation. We're gonna go.
Mhm.
We're gonna go for a nice deep dive, intellectual dive, which people will like.
And you know, and when you get to that point, just like Committee Member Moore said, Member Moore, you know, the stakeholders and things will be involved when we get that deeper into this. So appreciate that.
Yes.
Other than that, if there's any other questions, any comments? So in hearing, seeing none, I will take a motion.
So, Chair,
Mr. Chair,
Oh, excuse me. Yes, go ahead.
can I ask one clarification? This right now is on the agenda to go to consent.
I see that.
But I'm hearing there's a request for a full presentation. So I guess just before you make the motions made, I'm not sure if the intent is to put it on the business agenda to make a presentation.
I didn't see it in there either. So
No, it's on there to go to consent, but that means there would not be a presentation at the council meeting. So I'm just, if the goal is to have a presentation, it should probably be on business.
Yeah, the intent is to go to the full council with a report, and that's how we access our citizens and get them involved.
So then I think I would just ask that the motion be amended to say to the business agenda instead of consent.
thank you. So we have a motion to move it to business, our next business, to our next council meeting instead of consent from anyone. That'd probably be what I'm looking for.
I'll second that. I heard Councilor Tran make the motion. Is that right?
I was going to.
Go ahead.
Okay, so let's try to revise this. I move to forward to the business. Okay, I lost it.
Instead of consent agenda at the end, it should be to the business agenda for approval.
Thank you.
Okay, I move to forward the Climate Action Committee report to the business business what agenda on May 18,
yes,
2021 consent agenda. Is that good?
Just the business agenda.
No. Councilor Tran, may I help?
Yes, please.
Yes, I move that we move the climate action planning to the business agenda for the city council meeting on May 18th.
Okay. So moved by Committee Member Moore, seconded. I'm going to say it's probably seconded by Committee Member Tran.
Second.
Thank you. Okay. So we have a motion on the floor. Is there any more discussion on the motion? That wording on the motion, I believe, is correct. Thank you. And so hearing, if you don't have any other discussion on the motion,
I
anyone?
would like to confirm the motion, I believe, is move to forward to the full council the Climate Action Committee report to the May 18th, 2021 business agenda for approval. Does that meet everyone's approval?
Yes.
That sounds right.
And
perfect.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So, as I understand it, it came here to this committee, and then it's going to go straight to the full council for a discussion.
On the business
And
side, it's
action?
not for consent, just for business.
For first reading?
This isn't, is it a first reading, Rebecca?
No, it is simply to the business agenda.
Okay, so for introduction. Got it.
Yes.
I just want to make sure I'm clear on what to expect on May 18th.
Okay.
It's just for a presentation. It's on the business
Right.
agenda for a presentation. So there's not a first reading.
There's nothing on there, right?
No.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor Kraft.
So Rebecca, can you do me a favor? Could you read that motion one more time, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Move to forward to the full council the Climate Action Committee report to the May 18th, 2021 business agenda for presentation.
Thank you. So I'm going to have it as Committeemember Moore for the motion, Committeemember Tran for the second. So there's any other discussion on the motion?
Nope. Thanks, Rebecca.
Thank you. I think that's correct. So hearing, seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Thank you. Motion passes 3-0. Thank you. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Cindy and Mark. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
We're going on to item I, resolution setting public hearing date for the 2022 to 27 Transportation Improvement Plan. And that is Rick Perez. Rick?
Okay, good evening, Chair Baruso, Council President Honda, committee and council members. I assume you're hearing me okay?
Yes, we are.
Okay. I apologize. I have to use a variety of technologies to get through, one of which does not include a webcam. So I apologize for that, but I can assure you I am dressed appropriately. So with that, topic tonight is a resolution setting a public hearing date for the 2022 through 2027 Transportation Improvement Plan. And the policy question is, should the council pass a resolution to set a public hearing date for adoption of the 2022 through 27 Transportation Improvement Plan on June 15th, 2021? So state law requires that we update annually our Transportation Improvement Plan, subject to a public hearing prior to adoption, and staff's proposing the public hearing to be held on June 15th this year. So options considered are to approve the proposed resolution or do not approve the proposed resolution and provide direction to staff. Mayor's recommendation is option 1, to forward the proposed resolution to the May 18th, 2021 consent agenda for approval. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Rick. Any questions? Okay. Hearing, seeing none, I will take a motion.
That picture is fascinating.
Okay, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Okay. I move to forward the proposed resolution to the May 18, 2021 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
Motion by Committeemember Tran, seconded by Committeemember Moore. Any other discussion on the motion? Hearing, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes 3-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rick, for being on the phone and having your clothes on. So.
Thank you.
So down to item J for Ryan Medlin. You have the progress update on sound transit activities, Ryan.
Good evening, Chair Baruso, committee members, council president, and council members. My name is Ryan Medlin, and I'm here with the monthly update on sound transit activities in Federal Way. Starting with the Federal Way link extension, clearing continues at the similar locations as last month. The shaft on the south side of 272nd, kind of adjacent to the Mark Twain property, is scheduled to be drilled for the future column later this month. They're still coordinating the timeline for the Mark Twain restoration with the school district, but it might happen as early as this summer to update the play field for the kids when they return in the fall. Additional clearing along I-5 is continuing. They will be stripping topsoil from south of Military Road down to 317th, and they will also be starting the tree removal from about 304th Street north up to 288th Street, basically connecting the two areas of previous clearing right there in the middle. I do want to mention that they have a neighborhood briefing scheduled with Camelot Mobile Home Park later this month. And given that they have so many of those mobile homes are really just a couple feet off of the washed out limited access property, they've actually given them a dedicated outreach person to try and make sure that they can get all the questions answered for those residents. In addition to these larger areas of clearing, you might see some smaller pockets of clearing along I-5. That would be them making room for future columns over some of the roadways right along the freeway there. And then in the city center area, we now have all three stages of the column work underway at different areas. The foundation shafts for the columns themselves, as well as the caps going on top of the columns. They're focusing mainly on those columns in the immediate station area because they need to get going on the actual building to stay on schedule. And then the rest of the work around the downtown area is mainly traffic or utility work, still in support of that. For example, the HOV ramp is expected to be closed this weekend. The roundabout will have flagging to allow traffic to continue, but the ramp itself will be closed as per their contract with WashDOT. A couple of things I wanted to note. Donald Lipsky has submitted his structural information for his foundation to Sound Transit so their design team can continue forward, but there is no updated design at this time. When I checked with them last, additional outreach is expected towards the end of this year. They are also doing some outreach related to updating the public on the Federal Way Transit Center design, showing the current state of the buildings, the layout as was presented for the last month to council. The website, which is one of those lovely URLs that's very difficult to read out loud, but it is there and is making its round way on social media, as well as they did a press release to the Federal Way Mirror. When I checked with them today, they had about 500 responses, is what they told me. The open house will continue and be open until next Monday, so May 10th. With the OMF South, staff comments were submitted to Sound Transit by the deadline for the OMF for the DEIS. We don't know the date yet when the Sound Transit Board will identify a preferred alternative, but as was mentioned by the Sound Transit staff, it is expected to be later this year. Tacoma Dome, there are no updates since the previous presentation where there was an update. So with that, I am available for any questions that there may be.
Thank you, Ryan. Council President Honda.
Thank you. Ryan, after the all the excitement about the elephant sculpture, what is the process going forward? Will Sound Transit bring to our Arts Commission and the council the proposed sculpture that Mr. Lipsky is going to try to build here, or will we have any kind of input in it at all?
So the expectation is that there will be informational briefings to both the Arts Commission and the City Council. There's no set agreement in place, so it's kind of we're waiting until Mr. Lipsky has a design to present, and then we will talk and figure out what's feasible for having him attend. Given that he's based in New York, even if we're back in person, it may still need to be virtual. But I believe, but everything I've heard leads me to believe that he and Sound Transit both are intent on having him update both the Arts Commission and the City Council.
Before the Sound Transit Board accepts his proposal?
I don't know if the board even formally accepts his proposal. I don't know the specifics of their contract with the artists, but before the sculpture is constructed.
Okay, I guess that's not answering what I want to know. So, as a council, and as an arts commission, what we expressed to Sound Transit is that we would like to have a say in the final sculpture. So it would be nice to be able to not be surprised again and to actually say, yes, this fits into our image here in Federal Way and go forward. You know, we like it, or, you know, this, we don't like this. I don't want to get into what happened last time. So who could I ask to find out what the process is going to be?
So I can circle back with Ashley and the arts staff with Sound Transit. They were the ones that introduced Mr. Lipsky.
Okay.
To see if they would be able to outline it. But until he has a design, we don't have anything to circulate.
Right.
So I can circle back with them, but I guess as far as a formal approval of the sculpture, we don't have any mechanism to force a yes, no vote. We can force public opinion and we can force public comment. But just as with any person that was installing art on property that they controlled, we can't necessarily directly control the art.
I understand that. I just don't want to get into what we got into with the elephant.
Do you have a...
Okay.
Okay.
Well, if for instance, if Mr. Lipsky proposes an eagle and whatever, before Sound Transit, someone at Sound Transit has to accept his proposal so he can move on, be it the board or the art committee or whoever at Sound Transit, but someone has to accept it. Before that acceptance is done, it would be nice if we could actually see what is being proposed so that we don't have to have happen what happened last time.
Okay. Now I understand your question. And last I spoke with them, my understanding is yes, they plan to do the public outreach before they get to that stage, but I will affirm that with them and get back once I can get that affirmation forwarded to you.
That would be great. Thank you.
Ryan, do you know if have they set a timeline on that at all?
No, there's no firm timeline. The rush to get the sculpture was strictly so that they could finish the layout of where it's going and get the loading information so that they make sure they know what they're building. As far as the timeline for the sculpture, it's slated to be installed before the station opens, but 3 years is a pretty broad timeline. So.
Long time, yeah. Okay, I was just trying to see if there was a timeline on the draft or something like that. That's all. If they had an idea.
Late this year is the best I've heard.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Kochmar.
Thank you, Chair Baruso. Council President Honda is using the word nice, and I think that's lovely. I use a quite different word, probably more of a demand for my 1/7 of the vote. So I really don't want Sound Transit walking all over us. I want, for my 1/7 of the vote, I intend to stand up. I'm sure my other colleagues want to do the same, but to do what we feel is right for the community. So I would put it in stronger terms is all I'm trying to say. Please, we are expecting to be included in this decision. And I think our citizens want us to be included as their representatives because they're going to be contacting us. So to express their opinion as well. So anyway, thank you very much, Ryan. I just want to express it in stronger terms. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Ryan? Comments? Okay. Thank you, Ryan. We're going to move to item K, and that's Mr. James Rogers, Downtown Planning Project Options. James, the floor is yours.
Good evening, council and committee members. Thank you for being here tonight. I'd like to talk to you a little bit as a follow-up discussion. Let me share my screen here before we get started. There we go. So this is a follow-up discussion. Last time we got together, we in 2020, council expressed a desire to conduct extra downtown planning efforts. During the 21-22 budget deliberations, the $200,000 project cost estimate was partially funded with $100,000 allocated to the 2021-22 general fund. This funding is to be used for consultant services. So staff is seeking feedback on possible options that might meet the needs of the request with half the funding budgeted. During our initial discussions on April 5th, we asked council members about their needs and desired outcomes for the planning effort in order to get a better idea of the scope of the project. Due to the complexity of the topic, it became clear that this needed to be a longer conversation in order to better understand the expectations of the entire council. To achieve that end, smaller and more personalized meetings were held over the following 2 weeks with each council member. After these meetings, staff now believe that we have a good idea of council's expectations for the downtown neighborhood. What we heard from you. We heard from you that the desired outcome of the project is to ensure that the downtown neighborhood or the city center develops into a well-defined pedestrian-friendly area with a good mix of housing and jobs that will produce a vibrantly active downtown, both day and night. A diversity of housing, including market rate and affordable housing, rental and ownership, with increased retail and office uses, along with a network of public spaces and parks. Placed with an attractive streetscape and a safe, livable environment. The city center should be a desirable place to live, work, and play, as well as a regional destination for shopping, entertainment, and social gatherings. What we heard from you is that your description or vision happens to align very well with that of the current vision statement in the comprehensive plan for the city center. I won't read all of that, but if you've been to the comprehensive plan, you can see. I'll go ahead and read this first portion of it, of the vision and the plan. By the end of the comprehensive planning horizon at 2035, the Federal Way City Center has evolved into a cultural, social, and economic center of the city and fulfilled its role as one of Puget Sound's regional network of urban centers. This role is reinforced by pedestrian-oriented streetscapes, an efficient multimodal transportation system, livable and affordable housing, increased retail, service, civic, and office development in a compact area, a network of public spaces and parks, superior urban design, and a safe and vibrant street life. It goes on, it's much longer, but that's the gist of it. And we can see that your vision aligns very well with the stated vision in the comprehensive plan. During our meetings with council, we discovered some topics or concerns that resonated with most of you. Those were walkability, the commons mixed use development, that the city should influence TOD development in the area, mixed income housing, create attractive livable space, make downtown a destination, break up the super blocks, pedestrian street amenities were important, mixed use development, spread out low income housing, an active nightlife, more condos, build higher, and create gathering places, create a well-defined downtown, and wayfinding the kiosks. There were more, but these were the most common topics. If we look at those topics by type, we can see that they centered around land use, design, and street life, followed closely by housing and jobs, the primary topics. To accomplish this vision, staff are proposing two concept alternatives for consideration, as well as a list of known actions that could be folded into either alternative. In alternative one would envision prioritizing city efforts by sub-area within the city center. The center would be divided into 3 phased sub-areas. Phase 1, the blue area, would include those proposals within this core zone most influenced by the new transit station. The area would include the currently city-owned properties, the Sound Transit surplus properties, the Commons Mall property, and the City Center Plaza properties. This work would be centered around a pedestrian bicycle spine, 21st Avenue South, planning for the Sound Transit surplus parcels, use of the city-owned parcel, and working with private property owners on redevelopment plans. Phase 2 would focus additional city efforts on the other properties currently in the city center core, or the green areas. We would expand from phase 1 to include phase 2 in this second phase. Finally, the city would look at a finer level of detail in phase 3, the white area, and look for remaining opportunities to achieve the desired vision. Work on these 3 phases would need to happen sequentially, revisiting the vision after each phase. Some of the pros on this first alternative: it allows resources to be focused on a smaller area. Phase 1 has approximately 100 acres. This would allow a finer grained lens to be applied to the problems and opportunities. And by focusing on a portion of the city center first, the city will be able to look at other areas in phases 2 and 3, understanding what's been accomplished in the first phase and look for missing pieces or lessons learned before expansion. The second alternative is the implementation strategies and actions currently outlined in the City Center chapter of the comprehensive plan. They were written to achieve the vision. Some actions have been completed over the past few years. Some of those bigger ones, more recognizable, are Town Square Park, Performing Arts and Events Center, establish a high-capacity transit center, and development of an economic development strategy. There are 15 actions identified in the comp plan for the 2015-2035 timeframe. The initial work items would include evaluating the action items and developing a timeline and budget for each incomplete item, developing a prioritization list of the remaining action items. As I mentioned, there were some proposed actions for either alternative. Those could be a request Sound Transit convey surplus properties to the city for development, pursue public-private partnerships to leverage desired development on publicly owned properties, work with Sound Transit and property owners to create development agreements that will help the city achieve the vision of a high-density, mixed-use, pedestrian-friendly downtown, including the dedication of right-of-way to augment the street network, develop safe pedestrian and bicycle crossings of 320th Street, develop designs for 21st Avenue South pedestrian bike spine, gateway and wayfinding features for downtown neighborhood, and streetscape amenities such as benches, waste receptacles, street lights, bike racks, and more. Audit the comprehensive plan for any necessary revisions, and audit Title 19 to uncover whether there are any code revisions are necessary. So in summary, your vision aligns very well with the vision already laid out in the comprehensive plan for the city center. Your primary topics of concern were land use, street life and culture, design, housing, jobs, non-motorized and commercial development. Alternative 1 is a phased implementation. Phase 1 starts small in the station area and phase 2 expands out to the rest of the core area, and then phase 3 finally expands into the frame. Alternative 2, again, is to continue the planned implementation as laid out in the comprehensive plan, covers all of City Center, prioritizes the action items, and creates a timeline and budget for those. And again, we're proposing to use the funding for a design professional to help us realize this design needs. So with that, I'd like to hear some of your thoughts and your ideas on these alternatives or any questions.
Thanks, James. No, you captured a lot of it. I know I was in the meeting with you, and a lot of it's in there, so thank you for that. But we'll go to Councilmember Kochmar. You have a question?
Thank you, Chair Baruso. Yeah, thank you, James. I agree with Chair Baruso. You did capture a lot of what I had requested, and I'm pretty sure many of my colleagues were requesting similar things. But I'm wondering, we're going to hire a planner, and we're going to create this comprehensive plan with new ideas or, augmented ideas. I'm wondering if we shouldn't have some kind of a open house for developers at the PAC to come in. I mean, we're going to have this new plan. We're going to have new ideas. We're going to we need to market it. And I'm just wondering if we shouldn't invite developers in to give us their ideas or what they're looking for and to introduce our plan. I know, for example, City of Covington, I think is getting a new town center being planned for their community. I'm wondering if we shouldn't try to market this or market that we're open for business. And then once we get the ideas in or get our plan in, and then invite the community also to a meeting where we can have input from the citizens. So are any of those ideas anything that you think we can do?
Well, I think that can certainly be part of the plan, and public participation is always welcome and important in getting put on the ground what the people want. So yes, I think that's important.
I just want to make sure the developers know that we're welcoming them in.
Absolutely.
Come on down. Thank you.
Great comment, Councilmember Kochmar. Great comment. Council President Honda.
Thank you. Thanks for doing this and for taking the time to meet with the council members. I appreciate that you did that. I agree with Councilmember Kochmar. I'd like to know, what it would take for us to get private developers into the city and get their ideas and feedback on what it is that they need from us as a city council to want to develop in Federal Way. We have landowners in the downtown area, and we don't have very many of them because a few landowners own a lot of the property in downtown. And for instance, the commons, it would be great to maybe have a chance for the council to meet with the owners of the commons to see what it is that they envision for their property.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the action items is to definitely work with the property owners in the area to make sure that everybody's on board with the same vision, and to understand their concerns as well, and to make sure we can put together a plan that they can buy onto. So.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to this. Thank you.
Yes, agree. Is there any other comments or anything from anyone else? Great job, James. I applaud. Like I said, there's a lot in there, and we can move forward. And great idea by Councilmember Kochmar. And Council President Honda. I mean, bringing everyone together is going to be something that I think that we really need to do, because what things are going on now, construction and other things right now, would be really, really good to know.
Sure.
what type of thing they're looking for, what they're looking for from us to be able to say, hey, I want to build in Federal Way. So good thing. So thank you.
Is there a preference for either of the alternatives?
Anyone?
I would like to have some more time, just a few more days to look at it and to really dig into it, if that's okay.
Sure, it's not a problem.
Thank you.
I agree, because I was kind of looking at it too, trying to wonder, okay, which one is that again? I mean, they're all great. Don't get me wrong. But yes, a little bit more time to take a look at detail, maybe how that might work. If you have that, if we have that, but sure, anyone can ask questions. And James, you're open for questions. I take it.
Oh, absolutely.
Anyone wants to email? Yes, thank you.
You bet. And maybe we'll touch base in a week or so and see if you've had a chance to think it over.
Okay. Councilmember Kuchmar, you have another question?
Sure. Thank you, Chair. So I'm just wondering, James, I guess what I'm expecting is that the planner is going to give us some ideas, but are you asking that we should direct the planner in his or her
well, I guess
visioning?
What we're
go ahead.
proposing, instead of hiring a planner, to hire an architectural designer to come in and help us envision things like streetscape and building design and how things will look and feel, and that we implement the current plan as it stands.
Well, yeah, that's what I. Thanks, James. That's what I thought we were going to do. Architectural planner is just, or design is just fine. But trying to pick between alternatives at the moment, for me, it's just kind of like a big expanse of, gee, I don't know. I just need to have somebody give us some concrete ideas.
Okay. Well, okay. Very good. We'll touch base on it next week then.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could real quick, just, could I say something, Mr. Chairman? I'm sorry.
Yes. Go ahead,
thank you. Just to aid the discussion so we can move this along. So we are under a timeline. The council does want us to move on this. So if you would like to take some time for additional consideration, please take that time. We would like this to move along. So I hesitate to give you a deadline, but if there's a date that we could work from where we could get your feedback, that would be helpful. And then also perhaps to aid in the discussion, I'll be very clear, either alternative works for staff just fine. We want to carry out your vision. I would say that in discussions with the smaller groups, if I could just put a word on everything I heard, it was placemaking. We want to make a place, make our downtown a place. And so with that in mind, if we're talking about placemaking, alternative one is probably more along with that, because it starts with phase one on a place and then expands out to phase two and so on. Alternative two also gets us in that direction, but just to maybe help you think a little bit more, that's kind of what I heard, and maybe that's something that might help your analysis. But if we could put a date, and maybe, I don't want to put you under pressure, but maybe by the end of the week, is that too soon? Okay, so if you wouldn't mind, then by Friday, if we could get your thoughts on this so that we could move this schedule along, that would be most helpful. We appreciate your input on this.
Is that PowerPoint, Brian, available for us?
Yes, it should. If it's not, we'll make it available.
Thank you. Yeah. Councilmember Sefadasan?
Yes. Is it okay while we're reviewing to, if we have additional ideas that we did not discuss during our meetings, is it okay to add those also?
Sure.
Of course.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Kuchmar.
Thank you, Greg. Chair Baruso. Brian, I like the idea of place. That's exactly what I think we were trying to say. And option one is fine, or alternative one is just fine with me. So, if you need a deadline to move forward, that's fine on my part. But just move forward. I want to see this happen in my lifetime. Okay. Thank you, Chair Baruso.
You're welcome. Thank you. Councilmember Sefadasan, you have another question? Your hand's still up. I just want to make sure.
I'm so sorry. I just didn't know it. Thank you.
Alrighty. Thank you. And okay, thank you. I was gonna say thank you. All right. Okay, Brian. So we're hopefully by the end of the week, we'll get that to you. And if you can send the PowerPoint out to us, great. Take a look at the different options, alternatives again. That would be fabulous. So thank you.
That would be great. And so just for communication, James, is the presentation available to them now, or will we need to make it available?
It should be available now. I can email it to anyone.
Okay. So if why don't we do this? We'll if Rebecca, if you're okay working through you, we'll send her the presentation, and then you can get back to her on whatever additional feedback that you have, and then we'll take it from there.
Sounds good.
I make all presentations, I add them to the Laserfish link, so you should be able to get there from the main webpage, city webpage.
Okay. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Very
Brian.
good. Thank you, everyone.
So Brian, you're saying by Friday at 5:00, or some people actually need to know
Midnight.
this. So
Well, I'm merely responding to some of the committee members said they needed more time. So I just want to identify, let's all be on the same page of when we're going to get the feedback. So Friday by 5 is great.
okay.
Yes.
So after 5:00, if you haven't responded, it's too late.
So no 501, no 459,
No 501.
30 seconds.
Yep. That's right. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Councilmember Kraft, you have your hand up.
I just wanted to say thank you, Brian, and everyone else who's worked on this presentation. I prefer alternative one, so that we can focus on different aspects. I will take a look at the PowerPoint that you're going to send us, but that is my preference. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more comments, questions? Because James isn't done yet. He'll have the next item. I don't see any. So we're going to move on to item L, King County growth targets. James, it's yours again.
Alrighty. This is an update on the King County growth targets process and methodology. This presentation is informational only, and we are not requesting action at this time. The Growth Management Act provides the foundation for the development of regional planning policies through PSRC, and those policies shape countywide planning policy, which in turn provides guidance for the development of our planning policies. The regional population projection is handed down from the state's Office of Financial Management to PSRC. PSRC then allocates the population to each county based on the Regional Vision 2050 and the Regional Growth Strategy. Countywide planning policies developed by the King County Growth Management Planning Council, or GMPC, establish growth targets for each jurisdiction. The growth targets currently being established will be used for our updated 2024 comprehensive plan with a planning horizon to 2044. Our comprehensive plan will link these growth targets to land use assumptions and guiding where people will live and work within our city. This process happens every 6 to 8 years and coincides with comprehensive plan update schedules. The methodology for developing these growth targets is a 5-step process. In step 1, the county's share of the regional population allocation is handed down from PSRC. That allocation is based on the regional strategies outlined in Vision 2050. For the 2021 process, King County's share of the regional growth amounts to 50% of the total regional population and 59% of the total regional jobs. After converting population to housing and jobs, the county's share is 112,859 housing units and 220,789 jobs. These housing units and jobs must then be allocated to the jurisdictions within the county. Step 2 was the selection of factors to be considered when estimating growth allocations for each city. This provides a baseline for existing conditions and assumptions for consideration when dividing up the housing and jobs. Those factors were the current growth targets for the 2006-2035 comp plan, past job growth over the 2012 to 2018 period, past housing growth from 06 to 2019, current jobs, current housing, and the current growth capacity analysis. Cities within the county were also divided up into three categories: metropolitan cities, core cities, and high capacity transit communities. Federal Way was grouped with the core cities. Those are cities with population between 80 and 120,000. Step 3 is to collect the data for each of the factors outlined in the earlier step. Step 4 was to use that data to determine the proportionate share of the regional pie each jurisdiction has had historically for each factor. Step 5 was to use the proportionate shares to allocate the additional housing and jobs to the cities. This process created a preliminary growth targets currently under consideration. The county has 112,000 housing units and over 222,000 jobs to allocate to core cities. And this table shows the preliminary targets allocated, those highlighted in yellow, intended to match those totals. This was in February of this year. So King County then opened discussions with the cities to get their thoughts on these preliminary allocations and make adjustments where possible. Some jurisdictions asked for more, others asked for less. For comparison, Federal Way's previous growth targets in 2035 for the 2035 growth shown in green were 9,396 for housing and 14,268 for jobs. These 2035 targets are what our current comp plan is based on. Discussions continued, and this table shows the results of the first round of targets discussions. Some jurisdictions accepted more, some less. For Federal Way, we estimated the city would likely be able to accommodate some additional housing in the future above the initial projection, which was based on the historic trends. Public Works and Community Development staff came together and considered that 2.5 light rail stations will be operating here in the near future and will likely result in an increase in housing demand around those station areas as they come online. This first round of discussions left some 7,700 housing units and 35,000 jobs on the table, which still needed to go someplace within the county. After a second round of discussions, this is where we stand today. For Federal Way, we accepted a fair share of the remaining housing units, as did many other jurisdictions. On jobs, we also estimated that the new light rail stations would help draw additional jobs to the city. At this point, the housing units have all been allocated, but there are still 27,000, almost 28,000 jobs yet to be allocated. This table summarizes the allocations for Federal Way and the core cities as a whole. The control total is the total number of housing units and jobs to be allocated by the county to the core cities. The process successfully allocated all the housing units, but still left quite a few jobs to be allocated. The draft allocations have been accepted by the Growth Management Planning Council, even though all the jobs are not accounted for. There's still a time period until May 5th, just a couple days away, where changes to these allocations can be made should we see the need to make adjustments. This table summarizes the past and current allocations for Federal Way and how they compare to our current capacity estimates. We currently have ample capacity for housing and job growth. It's important to note that these targets are a prediction looking 23 years into the future. We can plan for these targets, but there's no guarantee that the future will be as we predict it will be. And 6 to 8 years from now, we will go through this process again and adjust our plans accordingly. This is an ongoing repetitive process and part of being proactive in our city's planning. While King County is in charge of these growth targets, the city determines in what manner that growth will be accommodated. The next steps, these draft targets are included in the city countywide planning policies that are currently out for public review and comment. That comment period runs through May 5th, and this is our opportunity to make adjustments if needed. Amendments to the CPPs and targets based on public comments will be presented to the Growth Management Planning Council for approval on June 24th. And the GMPC is scheduled to adopt the planning policies and targets in the third quarter. And in the fourth quarter, the adopted CPPs and targets will come to the city for ratification. And with that, I'll open it up to questions.
Thank you, James. Any questions? So those are just a correct, to confirm again here, those are just predictions or not predictions, but forecasting.
It's yes, those forecasts come from the state down to the regional level, and then the region breaks it up into the counties, and then each county breaks it up to the cities. So everybody's taking their fair share of growth is the methodology.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from anyone? I don't see any. Okay. All right, James. I think
very
that's
good.
it.
Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you very much.
Much appreciated.
Thank you. Great. Thank you very much. So we're going to move on to the last item we have is item M. It's the community workforce agreements. And I think, EJ, do you have this one?
Yeah, I believe this is more for council discussion. But the update that I have is we were not able to find a city in Washington with a population under 200,000 that has a community workforce agreement in place. At the request of Chair Baruso via the mayor this morning, well, I got the request this morning. I did reach out to Berkeley, Hayward, and Costa Mesa, all in California, all three cities in California. However, I did not receive a response from any of the three cities. So my understanding is those three cities do have it. Their populations are ballpark 115 to 160,000. So they're all larger than us, but they're close. But like I said, I was not able to speak to any of the three of them today.
Okay. And I think for everyone, those are some cities that came up that was known that had some. So I think that for an update, for if we can get a hold of those folks, EJ just kind of found out what the program's like, what's take for them to run it, cost wise, and things like that. I mean, there's some other things, some other information out there that's kind of floating around too that I know of. Like some possible help from King County, things like that for already higher zip codes that's out there. But we don't know anything about that yet. So yeah, it's all kind of hanging on their plate. So until we know, we really can't, we can't address that. So, but that's something coming down the pike, possibly, we don't know. So is there any other comments or anything on this? I mean, I know that for this, it's just, again, EJ, thanks. It's just updating really what we're kind of looking for. Committee member Moore, you have your hand up.
Hold on. Thank you so much, Chair Baruso. Yeah, I'm going to echo that as well, and I'd like to. I think there's an interest on the West Coast. And I think there's some answers that lie there that are relatively comparable to our city. So I'd like to kind of have a robust conversation of that at the next LUTC meeting, and and also I know that costs are always worrisome as it should be. So I think that there's going to be some more research that I'm going to be working on as well. So I think those are the two things I'd like to kind of bring back at the next LUTC meeting. So I'll give it back to you, Chair Bruce. Thank you.
I think your tasking was some of the funding mechanisms and things you were looking for. Okay, thank you. Okay, Councilmember Coachman.
Well, thank you, Chair Bruce. I'm just trying to understand what it is that we're trying to do here. I mean, literally, we're not going to have, I don't see where the real benefit is for our citizens or our city. There's a small benefit for union firms that have union employees, but there's also a disadvantage for minority and women-owned businesses. And I guess what I'm trying to, it's going to cost money for our seniors who are on fixed incomes because we're going to raise taxes, whatever fees we're going to be raising or taxes in order to fund this. And I'm just trying to understand, if it isn't even our employees who are going to be, any of our citizens working as employees for these firms, not necessarily. I'm just trying to understand where the benefit is for either for our citizens or our city. So I believe in equality. I believe that we should be fair. And I really have a lot of heartburn over excluding women and minority-owned businesses. I have a real problem with that. So thank you. That's my opinion.
Thank you. Council President Honda.
Thank you. My understanding was that we were going to find out tonight by Councilmember Moore if the state had funding to assist us in this.
Thank you, Council President Honda. I am actually actively working on that, and we just have to compile the information, and I'll be happy to bring that up. It's taking a little bit of time. So there's a number of things that are happening as we speak, and we're just kind of waiting to get some answers, and that takes time, as you know, Council President Honda. So definitely, that's why I'm asking. Let's bring this back to the LUTC meeting for those conversations to have, because those are the concerns that you guys have had, which is the cost. How's this going to work? And I think it's only fair for a policy group to come together and find those answers and continue to have a robust conversation of how do we move forward. Councilmember Coachmar, I appreciate your response or your concern about minority businesses. And I think that's, my vision is to have a full, robust conversation with various stakeholders and to walk towards a product that is going to be good for Federal Way. It's going to be good for South King County. It's going to be good for working families. It's going to be good for our youth and our community right here in Federal Way. I see a lot of benefits to this. And I respect your opinion quite a bit. And I think we must, look, it's really easy to say, well, there's too many impossibilities. Let's just close the book. We can't do it. We have to have, I think we owe it to our citizens. I think we owe it to our community to have robust conversations and find solutions where we can all be proud and say, this is a good policy. And we have to have the time to come up with that. So thank you.
I have another question. So there are no cities in the state of Washington our size that have a CWA, is that correct? In fact, probably very few cities in the country our size, except those three that might in California, but still we're at 97,000 people. So 116 to 140,000, it's Still pretty.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, that's okay. It's still quite a bit more than what we have right now.
Yeah, so we were what we were asked at the last meeting was to try and come up with cities in Washington. So we did not look beyond Washington. So I can't speak to the rest of the country. But what I can say is we could not find any cities. And I'm waiting for final confirmation from MSRC, but we did reach out to them and they could not readily find either any cities under 200,000 that had, and then, frankly, that's just the threshold we set as a number because they asked us for a population size to look. So to be perfectly honest, I picked 200,000 just as a placeholder. I can't tell you what the smallest city in Washington with a CWA is. But that it was just we could not find one under 200,000. Being double our size. So, but we did not look beyond Washington State. So the three that were identified were, to me via the mayor by a council member that I reached out to today when I got the email today from the mayor. So, like I said, I haven't spoken to any of the three of them. My understanding is they have CWAs, but I can't really speak to it too much.
So when we have our robust discussion that Councilmember Moore wants, I hope that all of the costs would be able to be laid out on the table, including the potential increases in swim fees and anything else that would go to pay for this program. Because we can't really have a true discussion unless we understand the true impacts. And I would really rather hold a discussion until we have all of that information, because that is extremely important to know what it's going to cost, not only the city, but the residents in the city to have this program in place.
So I'm not sure that at this level we're going to be able to have that conversation. What was presented last time included having a professional firm come in and actually do the analysis to get to those answers, as well as the public process that's required under federal law to go through this, the public outreach and all that process. There's a lot of this shapes that in that conversation of if we do this, then that, where even in the ones that for the large agencies in Washington State that do have CWAs, the threshold of where they kick in ranges from, I think the lowest I saw was a $1 million project and the highest I saw was a $35 million project. So depending on where those thresholds get set, it certainly impacts the discussion on costs. So, and somehow, our entire CIP for a year is not $35 million. So that number probably doesn't make any sense. But, I don't know, frankly, if 1 million makes sense. So, we need to have a lot of research and work done that's beyond the realm of expertise of our staff to be able to narrow down those answers, to actually be able to present hard numbers that you're asking for. And there's a little bit of a cart and horse here, certainly.
So that would require hiring another consultant, which is going to be a fair amount of money that we probably don't have at this point.
So when we talk to the two firms locally that do this work, and there are others, we just picked two that are very popular in this area. Yeah, it was, the budget that I presented last month was $400,000 to get through that work, as well as the required outreach that's required under federal law to go through the, which is involving the community, involving stakeholders, going through a public process. And then it was to start coming up with terms that the city would want to see in it. It excluded all of the actual negotiations with either groups of unions or the labor board, the parent company of all the unions. That's not in that number. That's just to get to the point of identifying the path the city wants to go down, so that the total overall cost would increase.
That's a lot of money. Thank you.
Councilmember Kochmar, you had your hand up still. Do you have another
I
question?
do. Thank you, Chair Baruso. Councilmember Moore, I certainly can agree with Council President Honda about the cost. I certainly appreciate the fact that your beliefs and that you would like to see things happen. But what I'd want to hear from you as a council member, I'd want to hear a really good cost benefit analysis that you might be able to do in association with whomever you're speaking with to present to the council. Because I wouldn't move forward on something that just says I believe and I want and I think. I need to see actual figures that would make me want to understand why this would benefit our citizens, where the money would come from to pay for it, and why we would want to exclude minority and women-owned businesses. I just would need to understand that from you. But I can certainly appreciate your feelings and your beliefs. So thank you very much, Chair Baruso.
Any other comments, questions? I think we're just gonna, for next time, EJ will come back and see what we have, and in the meantime, I ask Councilmember Moore to come up with some funding, some type of mechanism to see what's out there too. We can do that. But for anything else, Councilmember Kraft, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Chair Baruso. I appreciate everybody's comments here today. Council Member Kochmar, I actually spoke with, Vicky Chantarelli from that's the full name, the National Association of Minority Contractors, Washington chapter. And this person indicated that CWAs don't necessarily exclude minority and women-owned firms. It just really depends on how the cities really craft the specific CWA. So we would need to work with associations that represent the minority and women-owned firms so that they wouldn't get excluded, which I understand also that's a double-edged sword, because the more work obviously is the more cost. And so I can appreciate that. I do think though that not all CWAs would exclude those businesses that you are talking about as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. I just want to respond. Thank you.
Yes, go ahead.
Councilmember Kraft, I appreciate that. But I believe when we were discussing it, I think part of the CWA said that it would be only union businesses with union members. And most minority and women-owned businesses aren't necessarily union members. And so I agree with you in part that that's true. But, so that's what I'm concerned about, making sure that we're equal. But thank you very much for your concern and your expressing that you looked into this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Martin, you have another?
Yeah. All I'm going to say is just a kind of a reminder that it's really easy to get hung up on the fact that we can't do this. We shouldn't do this. It's not a good idea at this time. We can't do this. It's a disservice to our community. I think that's just my personal opinion. I think it's a really good reminder that we can shape this policy however way we think this ought to be, and it can be ours to shape it however way we want to shape it. That's the beauty of the policies. But I look forward to continuing these dialogues, these conversations, and look forward to walking towards some sort of solution as well, and making sure that we're hearing all voices throughout this process. Thank you.
Council President Honda.
Thank you. So I would be interested in Council Members Moore and Baruso, or whoever else favors this, to, as we have more discussions on this. What's wrong with the current process? And why isn't the current process working for the citizens of Federal Way, for the city of Federal Way, and how this process would make it better? I'd like to hear that from you all. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, in hearing everything, we all know this is something that there's a lot further discussion has to be done. And so I'm going to kind of leave it at that for EJ to come back and more to come back with information, and we're talking about this more. But there are some things we need to do. There's a lot of homework involved. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of things to do with it. So we will have to uncover every stone and do everything we can to figure this out on both sides. So any other, can you remember Tran? Yes, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I listened to both sides, and what I want to say is this. I mean, I'm willing to consider the pros and cons of this CWA. Okay, so I haven't made up my mind yet, but my suggestion is this. We have got to put a deadline on this subject because we are busy. Most of us have full-time jobs to do, and also staff time. Our respect for our staff. If we keep dragging this, longer, the more staff time have to be involved. So whatever it is that we want to do, I would suggest, or I would ask that we put the deadline on this, and both sides will have their say in it. Give us all the vote from there. But we should not drag this, any longer.
Yep. Thank you. Trying not to. There's a lot to uncover, especially with both sides. Do you want to
apologize?
Go ahead.
Maybe what's the best way for me to work with the forgive me, I'm not feeling good right now, okay? But what's the best way for me to work with you on the agenda? Because I know you and I cannot talk because we're the majority of the committee. Eric Rhodes, what's the best? Or Chair Bruce, I'm sorry.
I was going to, if Eric or EJ, if you want to comment.
So as I understand your question, it's how could the two of you work together?
To add some things to the agenda.
Well, I think there's a regular meeting before, a planning meeting where the agenda is set.
For the committee?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
For the committee agenda. You could just submit a request. And okay. I think that's how this issue got on the agenda last time. So a similar process will work to do that in the future.
Just want to make sure I'm going about it the right process. Thank you, Eric.
Yes, that's a good question. You should not have a discussion with other committee members about the agenda, but you can make a request. A one-way communication is acceptable.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. You're welcome.
All right. So our next meeting then, what are we be looking for from EJ? And Councilmember Tran, you're right. We have to at some point try to figure this out. And so I'm just trying to weed all through this too, everything that's out there, and to be able to do that right. So we'll look for an update, and can remember more if you would please come back with something, maybe it's substantial on some funding type of thing and where we're going with that, so we at least understand all those things, and then we kind of go from there. Then we'll figure this out. I mean, I don't have an answer right now either, so it's hard. to figure this one out. But thank you. Thanks, CJ.
Sure thing.
So our next meeting, if there's any other business. Okay. Our next meeting is June 7th at 5 p.m. It will probably be on Zoom again because I have a feeling we're going to move back to phase 2. Unfortunately.
Yep.
Which I didn't really want to hear either. I know everyone else didn't want to hear that. But I do have some kudos for EJ. I did use Eyes on Federal Way the other day. And in about 2 days, trash got picked up. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll make sure to share it with staff.
It worked.
It works. Yes, it does. Because there's like, no one's going to pick this up. So I drove by it like one day, and the second day came, and I said, you know what? I'm going to stop. So I stopped, took the picture, did my thing, sent it in, got a reply right away. In about a couple of days, day and a half, I got an answer. Drove back up the hill. It was gone. So thank you, EJ.
Good to hear. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for that. I mean, I that's just great. So this proves the point. It works. Please use it, everybody. So thank you, everyone. We had a long agenda tonight. Thank you, Rebecca, for the patience. And I will see everyone tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Yes, right? Tomorrow. So at this 5
5
o'clock,
o'clock.
right? Is the President Honda? Yes. 5 o'clock. Another early one. So thank you very much, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
The meeting's
Night.
adjourned.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
See you tomorrow.